All right, so Chris and I wanted to go ahead and talk about ExamSoft. We're actually both using it at UC Davis and Michigan State. So if you're not familiar with the ExamSoft platform, it is a secure computer-based examination environment. And I'll stress and emphasize secure. We here at Michigan State, we use student laptops, so students can come in the door with whatever machine they have, either on a Windows or an Apple platform. While they're taking a test, it actually locks down that machine, so they can only see the exam. They don't have access to internet or any other applications. As I mentioned, it runs on the Windows and the Apple platforms. Allows a great amount of flexibility for the instructors, so they can actually randomize the items, the item order, or any of the foils within the questions themselves. So that's a great way to deliver really a unique exam experience for each student, something that would be very difficult to do if you're relying on paper. Another one of the key advantages is really the amount of time saving. The system can calculate the results if you're using things that are more automatically graded, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, such as multiple choice, true and false, even fill in the blank. The system can auto-grade that and give you results literally moments after the exam ends. For exam integrity, as I had mentioned, the fact that you can randomize options really creates a unique test for every student. And really, with the computers locked down, there's no way for students to save, copy, paste any kind of information. We also use proctors, physical people in the room that are checking to make sure that students aren't pulling out phones or cameras or any other devices to record exam information. So the workflow is a little bit different, so I wanted to explain with a little diagram here. So the first step is really to create the exam, to import the questions into the system, and there's ways to automate that you can pull in hundreds of questions from a Word document or an Excel file automatically, so there's no need to type everything. Some systems you have to copy and paste everything in, so there's really easy ways to create an exam. My personal record time is 12 minutes from start to finish to get all the exam questions in and get the correct answers marked and get the exam published. So it is possible to do it very quickly. When you create that exam, you can include multimedia elements such as videos, images, PDF documents, things that would be very difficult, again, to do on paper, especially images, which many tend to not print well. The images are zoomable and pannable, so the student, if you have more of a high-resolution image, they can actually manipulate that image in the system. So once the exam is created, it is posted in the system, and the students on number 2, they get an alert that an exam is available for download. So that's an encrypted file, so they download it ahead of time to their laptop. Some do it, a couple minutes before the exam, some do it a couple days, depending when we have it ready. But they cannot open that file, so it's on their hard drive on their laptop, but they can't go near it until it's test time. So when it is test time, you give a password for that exam, and that's when the fun begins. So the exam is open, the computer is locked down, and that's when they actually take the exam. You can set a time limit on that. Usually we use 50 minutes. If you have accommodated students that need additional time, you set their profile in the system, and it will automatically give them the right amount of time. That time is what I call a personal clock, so it's their 50 minutes, so you're not dependent on handing out paper across the room and waiting if you're sitting in the middle to get your exam copy. So it's really a fairer method, I believe, for students to get the exact amount of time that they need and they deserve. So when their clock runs out, the program closes. So there's no more wrestling sometimes with students that, okay, pencils down, turn it in. They don't have that option. Once the time is up, it's up. So in number 4, when the exam is done, it's uploaded back to the system. So at that point, their laptop is unsecured, their internet is reestablished, the answer file is encrypted, and then uploaded back into the server. And you can see that as an instructor all in real time, who's downloaded, who's uploaded, everything right there. And number 5, finally, and we'll talk about that a bit more, is the scoring. So it's really easy to see your results right away. Like I said, within seconds you can score an exam. If you need to make any adjustments, those are easily done, and updates are ready within seconds. So quick overview of the system. From a faculty, a lot of the feedback, most of the feedback has been very, very positive. And here are some of the main items that my instructors point out, that they love having no more paper, not having to deal with the copies and the handing out and the collecting, the scoring and the weighting. Fast automated grading, like I said, that happens very quickly and very reliably. Reusable questions. Once you put information into the system, you can reuse that the next semester or the next year. You can create more of a question bank idea and continue to add to that and use an assortment over time. A lot of the methods to reduce cheating I already mentioned here, so I'm gonna breeze over those. And Chris will talk about a little bit more detailed reporting about some of the information that you can generate from the system quite easily. From a student perspective, it's really a consistent and reliable environment. When we first started about 2 years ago, students were resistant as they are to change. They weren't quite sure what the big deal was moving to a computer-based environment, and they were a little afraid. It's something new. It's new technology. They didn't know quite what to do. Now it's exactly the opposite. I use it in the vast majority of my first and second year courses. And I actually have students pursuing IT to convince other instructors, the one or two that didn't jump on board to use it, trying to get us to convince them to use it. And so far I've had a lot of success getting people on board. So it's funny what difference a year will make. The students were a little afraid, and now they actively want it. Some of the things that students benefit from, again, is the fair time allocation. So they get the time they need, nothing less, nothing more. So it's very consistent across the board for every student. And also, they can have other elements in their test. It's not just paper and text. They can have images, videos, PDF documents, anything that you can upload as an attachment. Fast grading, the students really like that. They don't have to wait 3, 4, 5, sometimes longer days to get their scores back. So a lot of times in the semester, we will get the results back within a couple hours to them. Those reports are optional, I'd have to say. They get an email alerting them that their grade report is available. So if they felt as though they did really poorly on the test, they don't have to go and look at it right away. They can wait. So they're not going to get a random email saying, hey, you got a 42%, have a great weekend. They get an email alerting them that the results are available, that they need to log in and look at them. One other area is category report. You can actually classify questions by category, and that really helps to give the students a lot more detailed feedback on which areas they're doing well in and which areas they could use some improvement in.
So I'll jump in now. One additional thing that I'll mention about the students is that for what we do here anyway is we make sure that they are comfortable with the system. We give them 3 trial exams that are non-graded, non-nothing, just low impact, what's your favorite color kind of exams, so that they're familiar with using the system before we actually throw them in with actual veterinary medical questions. Implementation-wise, one of the things that any institution who is looking at using this would need to be thinking about is who is going to be creating the questions and exams. Not authoring the questions, but I guess entering the questions in the system. While the system does have a relatively easy way to import the data, there's a certain training and learning barrier to getting things in, and frustration that our faculty at least have had. Rob mentioned to me that approximately 1/3 of their faculty are doing it all entirely themselves, with the other 2/3 being assisted. Here at Davis, we have a person who's one of her primary responsibilities is to facilitate getting the questions and the exams collected, integrated, and put together. What are the standard settings that your faculty and the students are expecting? Our expectations are that the exams will be secure, will be randomized, but you need to make sure that everybody's on the same page with that. Otherwise, you get frustrated students and frustrated faculty. What are your timelines for availability of questions and exams and downloads? Make sure that the faculty are on the same page, again, as to when they need to get you stuff, especially if you are acting as a facilitator for them. And then how are you actually going to be delivering this? At Davis, we have a mandatory laptop program, and so we have the students use their own laptops. But if that's not the case at other institutions, then you have to consider how that's going to happen. There is an option for taking the exams on iPads in a secure way, but they charge extra for that. Question authoring. So Rob mentioned that you can author the questions manually just through a web interface. You can import from plain text files or RTFs in a standard format. You can also import from a large Excel spreadsheet. Authoring the exams, you're basically, okay, I want to use these questions, and you say, okay, well, it's in this folder because you've classified the questions in a certain way. You have the ability to set the order of the questions if you want, plus or minus randomization. So again, within, say, a specific kind of case-based question, you might want to be presenting information about, okay, here that the animal presented this way, what do you want to do? Okay, now that you've done that, what do you want to do? And having the, so what's your diagnosis question come before the animal presents doesn't really work as well, but you have the ability to make it happen the right way. Other parameters, you can have a secure exam, that's our default, but you can also do it as an insecure exam. So if you wanted to have a open book but in-class exam, that's an option. You have the ability to set forward navigation only, so that if you have maybe one of those case-based questions where you're providing a certain amount of information, you want them to make an assessment and judgment based on that information, and then not go forward before then, then go on to the next question, and they're providing additional information that you shouldn't have had before. You have that ability. There's an optional calculator. You've got optional copy-paste functionality within the system only. So you could, maybe there's essay questions where you want to copy and paste between the questions. You answered something you over-answered a question 1, and you want to paste some of that into question 2. You can do that. Timelines for us anyway, assuming an exam on Friday at 8 a.m., we expect that the exam will be available for download by the students by 5 p.m. the night before. Wireless networking is much, much, much better than it ever has been in the past, but there's no reason to be brash about it, and so we expect the exam to be available for the students to take exactly at the start time. Edits from the faculty to I should have started at the bottom, so all questions are submitted by Tuesday at 5 p.m. The facilitator puts them together, gets a draft of the exam to the instructors by Wednesday at 5 p.m. Edits must be back to her by Thursday at noon so that the exam can be available for download by 5 p.m. on that Thursday. This is obviously in a perfect world. We often don't work in that world, which is unfortunate because she's often, our facilitator is often stressed, and it's not the easiest process working with a large number of diverse faculty, because we are, like one of the other presenters, we are on a block curriculum, so we have 30 instructors in some of our courses. Categorization, we categorize each of the questions by author, by what course and what specific exam it is planned for, as well as disciplines. The disciplines that we use are broken out into these kind of basic categories. Obviously, this is not a complete list, but it makes it so that we can then provide reporting back to the students and to our faculty on how are students doing on biochemistry, or how are our students doing on these specific things that are not necessarily just the sole focus of single exams. We can look across time. The student is continuing to have anatomy problems, for example. Proctoring, we have technical proctors in every single exam. It is an absolute requirement. Don't try this if you are not prepared to do that. We have spare computers ready to be deployed in case somebody's laptop does not want to start the exam. The securing of the exam process takes some time, and students occasionally don't restart their computers regularly, and so there's a bunch of other crap that doesn't want to be shut down. We have an optional faculty in the room because we've got these block curriculums. There's not a lot, if somebody might have 2 questions, and so it's difficult for a faculty member to spend 2 hours in an exam to be able to potentially answer 2 questions. And so our submission to the students is that if there are problems with the questions, we will figure that out in post after when we're looking at the results. We provide this PowerPoint in the front of the room during the exam, just as reminders. This is what our expectations are. It's unfortunate when students forget to bring their power supply and their computer dies in the middle. Some of the fill-in things, if they enter some of these alternate characters, it has caused problems in the past. We specify that they must show us once they are done with the exam and they say, yes, I'm really done, I want to submit this, it turns to a big green screen. We say that they have to show that to us before they leave the room, and we're tracking that we have received, that they've uploaded their results for every student before they're allowed to leave. And I'll hand it back to Rob for reporting.
All right, so usually the protocol at MSU is at the end of exam. This is one of the reports that I'll generate for the faculty right away. So this is the quick report, usually a 2 or 3 pager, but in a real user-friendly, easy-to-read way. It tells you the performance of the people, the students that took the exam, the high and the low score and the average score, as you can see in the upper left, along with the exam score reliability, the CARE 20 rating in the bottom left. In addition, a histogram of the distribution of how students scored that you can see on the right. So that's a real quick and easy heads-up method of getting that information to the instructor or moderator for the course to see how their students performed. If you choose to use categories, that's also generated. So if you want to classify your questions by type, topic, etc., it'll generate a category report that you see here on the right with the high, median, and low value for each category area. Finally, this is really what gets the most attention, is the question performance readout here. So you can see for each question, you can see in right about the middle, the correct column, how many people actually got that answer correct, and then how their responses were distributed on the right-hand side. So you can look at, let's say, number 2 and 3, the vast majority of the class out of about 110 people got those answers correct. But then you want to get faculty to pay close attention to number 6, questions like that, where we got about 3/4 of the class got the answer correct, but quite a few missed it, so only about 77 got it. So those are the questions you want to dig a little deeper into and look at the options and see what could have been confusing for them. Perhaps there was a keying issue or something of that nature. There's many other reports in ExamSoft, so again, that's the 2 or 3 page heads up more report. You can do a detailed analysis report. So this is an item analysis report, so that'll dig a little deeper and give you, say, more detailed metrics about every question that was on the exam. You can also generate detailed student reports, so you can get a really good breakdown of every single question that they answered, what the correct answer was, what the response was, how much time they took to actually answer that question. So it depends how deep you want to dig. So for results, as I had indicated, the results are really available moments after an exam. A lot of times last semester we had a pretty good clip going that most of our exams would be given from 1 to 2 p.m. So the students would finish up at 2. I'd give the initial results to the instructor right around 2 o'clock as students were leaving. They would review and make any adjustments, regrade, and send them the updated reports, and we would release the results to the students before 3 p.m. So really amazing that roughly an hour after the exam ended, the students would get their grades back. So a lot faster than taking Scantron forms and trying to hand grade. I should say for scoring adjustments, there are many different ways you can adjust those scores. Miskeying is probably the most common. B was marked as correct instead of C, etc. Also, if multiple answers should be considered correct, maybe both B and C, after a little bit of review and classroom confusion, the instructor may want to choose to make those both correct. So you can definitely easily make that option. There's an option for partial credit as well, so that's one other route. Bonus questions and throwouts. So if there was a question that was just really confusing that most students missed, the instructor could choose to make that a freebie point so everyone could get that, or it could be counted as an extra credit point. Finally, it could just be removed from the exam, so you could score out of, let's say, 49 points instead of 50 if everyone was having trouble with that question. So definitely a lot of flexibility on how scoring is done. The recalculation, as I mentioned, it's done almost instantaneously. It's a couple seconds to recalc all the grades. Obviously, if you were to try that by hand, you could be there for a long time. So finally, releasing results. So this is the last step. So after all the uploads of answers are done, and also after any kind of grading adjustment has been performed, you can choose what you want to send out for the students to see, what gets included in their grading report. A lot of times it's just going to be their score and number of points and percentage that they had on the test. Some instructors choose to include the class stats, so how well the rest of the class did. You can even include the rationale for the questions, which is your reasoning as an instructor why A was the right answer, for example, for question number 5. And as you can see here below, the text is a little small, but all these options are customizable, so the instructor can choose to release as much or as little information for feedback for the students as they'd like. If you're really daring, and most people don't do this, you can you can release the actual exam as well, so that way the students get a digital copy of the actual exam, and they can see the original questions, the original answers, and how they performed as well. And again, that's a little risky. Most of my instructors don't like that because they tend to reuse questions from year to year, and they really don't want them getting out in the wild. So the future, I'll say from Michigan State point of view, and then Chris can add in on what UC Davis would like to do. Right now we're running ExamSoft in 2 out of our 3 didactic groups this academic calendar for the fall. So we will be expanding to semester 5 next fall. We've kind of ramped it up. Year 1 we did 1 cohort, and this year we're doing 2, and next year it'll be 3. I have a few people, instructors, that are interested in category use. I'm really trying to expand that and get more people to use that. I think that'd be beneficial from an assessment point of view, and for students to see what areas they're excelling in and which ones they're lacking. And finally, I'd really like to look at the idea of collaborating with other veterinary colleges. We seem to teach just about the same thing at every location, and we're all responsible for making exam questions about all these topics at every location. So it seems to make a lot of sense that we could share our question banks together and really have multiple regional, whatever you want to call it, collaborations where we could share that content information with each other. So I'd like Chris to give his point of view on where UC Davis is going in the future with ExamSoft as well.
So we started 3 years ago. We had a false start, but we've been using it full tilt for 2 years, and we plan to just internally we just want to have it for the first 3 years of the curriculum. I think that there's some interesting options for shared question banks, though I'm not. It's above my pay grade to speak to whether we can actually make that happen. To answer Jody's question, she had a question about advantages of using ExamSoft over using the internal test-taking tools like Moodle. There's actually two key things. Exam security is one of them for sure. The other is network agnosticness, is that because the students have downloaded the exam beforehand, it exists on their computer completely independently, that if your power goes out, your network goes out, the students can still continue to take the exam. We had a number, I mentioned the wireless reliability. We had some issues in the past where if the wireless goes down and you're doing a high stakes exam, that's a big problem. So we had to punt 1 or 2 of those, and have had to do that in the past. Experience using short answer and essay. The way those are graded is that you basically assign a specific question to a specific instructor or instructors to be able to grade, and that has worked pretty well for us. We've had some issues with the fill-in questions that if you're asking for a 1-word answer, 95% of your students will submit 5 words when 1 word would do, and so that's been a little dicey. We're moving more towards the essay questions unless there's very obviously there is one possible correct answer here. Instructors don't allow students to see the question they're submitting answers and the correct answers. Do the students have learn from their mistakes? So ExamSoft has a secure exam review option that we are not using. I think that Robert is. He can speak to that. What we do is we have printouts of the exam available in our curriculum support office that the students can review after the fact. We provide them with a list of the question numbers that they got wrong and allow them to go up and review what was right. They don't have access. They are not allowed to bring phones, cameras, or their laptops into that office, or at least they can't have them out while they're doing that review to protect the integrity of the exams.
Yes, and we do use the secure exam review feature, so I'd say probably half of my instructors use that, and we turn it on at the end of the exam. It will show their incorrect answers only, and we typically put a time limit on it, somewhere between 5 and 7 minutes, and that seems to work really well for students. They don't want to see the whole exam, is what I've heard. They don't have time to go through it. They're really interested in what they missed and what they put, so what they put and what they should have put. So that's worked out quite well. That still leaves enough time. We usually do a 50-minute exam and then a 5-minute review period. That gives them still 5 minutes to take a little break before the next lecture. So that timeline has worked quite well. What does it mean when a student's computer gets locked down? That means that only the soft test software runs, so that's the program they'll actually install and use to take the exam. So locking it down will kill their internet. It'll disable any other program running on their computer. It won't let them launch any other application or connect to anything else. So it's quite locked down. It becomes an ExamSoft machine, and that's all they can do is take an ExamSoft test.
One other thing I'll mention, Rob had in one of his former slides, exam integrity. And when I first saw that bullet point, I was thinking the safety and security and protection of the students' responses to that. One of the things that ExamSoft prides them on is that it's saving its data all the time. It's saving it every 60 seconds. It's making a backup of it every 6 minutes. It's going crazy in terms of how robust what it's doing to save the data. We have had, since we've been using it full tilt, we have had every exam that has been started, has been submitted and uploaded. We're very happy with that. It does take technical support in the room to keep the students calm when they're not likely to be calm, but that works well. So accommodations, yes, you specify for the specific students whether somebody has accommodations, and it then is time and a half or double time or some portion of time, and then it gives them that extra time. Does it have a facility to standard set? BEL or no? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with what that means. Rob?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that one either. I'll need to look up and see if that has any kind of standard set in place. I wanted to comment on the exam, say integrity aspect too. We did have one student just a couple weeks ago who claimed that her test closed early and that she ran out of time even though she had 5 minutes left on the clock. Well, she did not, so we were able to verify that through reporting. In addition to saving the information all the time, ExamSoft also keeps track of what question the student is on and what time they started that question and what time they moved on to another question. So it creates more of a map that the student was on question 19 at 1:55 and then question 21 on 1:56. And that was really helpful because I was able to go through with that report and say, well, no, for the last 5 minutes of your exam, you covered these 7 questions and you jumped around here and here and here. So that's one way to get away from some of these time disputes. Any conflicts with antivirus? I've seen a couple, and I've noticed in the last update, maybe about a month or so, it didn't like, I think it was WebRoot. It gave some complaints when the computer went to go into lockdown mode. If WebRoot was installed, it would get a little finicky about that. It didn't crash, it didn't cause any problems. It threw one warning error that it may not be able to disable it, and then it disabled it, and it worked fine.
Yes, you can set questions for review. And yes, the questions can be worth less than a point.
And there's a little marker in the interface, like a checkbox that students can mark which questions they want to go back and double check. So if they weren't quite sure on question 5, they put a little check mark on the navigator list next to number 5, and then they can continue. So that's a way for them to mark what they need to go back and address. One other really good feature for, let's say, a multiple choice question, the students can mark off foils that they want to cross off, kind of like a virtual cross off. So if it's A through E and they know it's not A or E, they can mark those answers, and it kind of grays them out and doesn't make them selectable. So it's a way for them to help eliminate possibilities since they don't really have a way to mark up the screen.
Okay, well, we're at our 10:30 mark. Thank you for the great questions.